Outlet Liquor is your place to buy a case. Stock up and save when you shop the lowest prices available every day at Outlet Liquor. You never have to wait for a sale. The more you buy, the more you save. Only at Outlet Liquor.
What's your outlet?
Welcome, everybody, to episode 139 of Two Goalies, One Mike, brought to you by Outlet Liquor, the place to buy a case on George Urban Boulevard. As you saw in the ad, get over there, tell them the voice from Two Goalies, One Mike sent you, and they'll take care of you. I am joined by Connor Hurls, my normal co-host, and returning after a brief hiatus, Ryan Drury from the Instigator podcast. How's it going, bud?
I'm good, guys. It's a pleasure to be back. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while, and yeah, there's a lot to talk about. So yeah, it's great to be back, man.
It's definitely been a minute. And hello, Matt. I know it's been 2 weeks since did we record last week, girls?
We did last week.
We did.
Quick because there's basically nothing to talk about. But
yeah,
we're almost back.
We're almost back. There's a 24 days, 24 sleeps until opening night against the Rangers.
You're already counting sleeps. I love it.
Sleeps, 24 sleeps before we hopefully see Devin Levi repeat history and make his Sabres regular season opening night debut and get another W against the New York Rangers. But a lot to talk about. And we've talked about in the group chat quite a bit. And I know, Drury, you're pretty passionate about your opinions with this particular subject, so we're going to get right into it. Mike Babcock has been fired, been shit-canned, been kicked to the curb. What other euphemisms are there? What else? Got anything else?
Pink slip.
Turfed, yes.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah.
I mean, we're talking about Ohio. This is the Buckeye State. He's been stiff-armed out of his coaching seat. Right. I mean, yeah, it's one of the weirder stories. You know what? Actually, that's not true. I'll walk that back. This isn't weird or surprising at all to anybody who knows anything about the game or has paid attention to anything that this cat's been up to for the last couple of years. It's not weird or surprising at all, actually.
Yeah, I heard when Columbus announced the hiring, it's been 4 years, and I'm not comparing the two coaches because they're two completely different people. But I also remembered that Lindy Ruff used to get criticized a lot in Dallas because he was just an old hockey talking head, a guy who wasn't willing to evolve to just the culture of hockey nowadays and the younger, how you're supposed to treat and talk to players. And, I thought, well, if Lindy changed, he changed dramatically in New Jersey. He figured it out. Maybe Babcock can too, because I think he was coaching a high school team before this, wasn't he? Did he take over some high school program or maybe a junior hockey program?
He I believe was at a prep school, a Saskatchewan prep school, which essentially amounts to collegiate hockey, I believe was what he was coaching back in his home province of Saskatchewan. So yeah, and he wasn't there for very long either. I think he was only there for about a season or so.
Yeah. And I mean, is that an attempt right before he tried to get right back into the swing of things in the NHL to show that he could, relate to the younger generation, to relate to younger players, to help, not be the same shithead that he was with Toronto and probably before with Detroit? I mean, probably, I imagine that was just a ploy.
I I honestly don't know. I can't get inside this guy's head and figure out, the depths of what makes him who he is. But who he is just a bad guy. And like here's the thing, right? Like you bring up Lindy. Yes, is Lindy, and is he still, like, in terms of his way of communicating on the bench during a game, and I'm sure in the room, a little more on the abrasive side? Sure. And you could say the same thing about Ken Hitchcock and Torts and, many other guys who are still in the league and who are not in the league anymore that, were certainly quote unquote in your face and would tell you in no uncertain terms that you weren't playing well, and would do it in such a way that maybe some people nowadays are uncomfortable with. I still have a lot of time for intense coaching. Like it doesn't bother me. Like, we've all had coaches like that. The thing of it is, though, that I've almost never heard anybody say a bad thing about playing for Lindy or their experience playing for him, that he sewered them or played mind games with them or treated them horribly off of the ice. It's one thing to go on the ice and say, "What the F are you doing? That's a brutal play," blah, blah. Like, look, my cousin is still coaching in the league and has coached with Torts for the last 6 or 7 years, and also coached right before he joined Torts staff, funnily enough, in Columbus. They're in Philly together now. Brad coached under Hitchcock in St. Louis and has nothing but great things to say about the way those guys treated the players outside of the work environment. Like, yes, on the ice, Ryan Reeves always tells that funny story about him and Hitchcock and how he grabbed Hitch's tie on the bench and he, like, gave it right back to him. And, but the thing with guys like Torts is afterwards, if they blasted you on the bench, they would pull you aside. And this is direct from my cousin who coaches with this guy, and Hitchcock too. They would pull you aside after if they felt like they really went at you that night and say, "Listen, I just feel like you can give us more. You're an important player to us. We need you to raise your level. We need you. And this team needs you." Like, they would go out of their way afterward, where people don't see that on the camera, and make guys still feel like, "Hey, you're part of this team and we need you. And we know you can play here." And that's why maybe I got a little out of line, where this guy, no one is coming to, like, who has rushed to this guy's defense over the last week since this story broke?
Literally nobody.
Like, have you seen anybody, like, being like, "Oh, this is blown out of proportion, and I had a great time playing for Mike"? Not one guy has put their neck out there to be like, "Oh yeah, really good dude." I said this on my show. I really feel, because he resigned, right? But the writing was on the wall. Like,
They wanted him out.
He did that essentially for tax purposes and to bank his retirement fund further, as if he didn't do that enough already with the Leafs. This guy, you almost never hear hockey play. I love the game. Hockey players are some of the most vanilla athletes when it comes to sound bites or saying anything that has more substance than "we got to get pucks in deep."
Yeah.
Like, 95% of what you hear are the most. Look at the amount of guys that have lined up over the last week to absolutely lambaste this guy. You never hear anybody in the game saying these things about people. Very rarely. Like, the only other guy I can think of recently is Bill Peters. And it's embarrassing that he's coaching in the CHL, by the way.
Yeah.
I just think that he got what he deserved, and I just don't have time for it anymore. Like, the amount of bad stuff this guy has done to people, and we can dig into it because I can think of about 50 examples, is atrocious. And we just don't need this in the game anymore. Like, again, I'm fine with abrasive coaches who hold guys to task. It's an intense sport. You're going to get an FU every now and again. You're going to get a what the F are you doing? I have no problem with guys being intense and demanding the same of their players, but there has to be, you have to marry that with a heavy layer of respect, because you can't treat people like this. And the stuff he's done to people and the way that he has abused his power over the years is just unacceptable to me. And I mean, go down the line from his time in Anaheim, where Steve Ruchin couldn't stand this guy, a very respected dude, helped them on that 03 Cup run where Jaguar was brilliant, couldn't stand him. The young guys were afraid of him. Like, it's one thing to be intimidated by your coach and want to be in line and stuff, but when you're like afraid of a guy, I just don't, have time for that. And right on through Detroit, where he did abhorrent things to many people, but most notably, of course, the Johan Franzen story, which everyone is familiar with. When a guy like Henrik Zetterberg, who's one of the quietest dudes ever, and I said this on our show as well, you often see sometimes European players will go home and do an interview. It gets translated poorly. Like, that's not really what I said. Zetterberg, after he retired, did an interview at home in Sweden, and they were talking about that 08 Cup team. Mm-hmm. And he said, and then someone asked him to clarify the statement to make sure it's what he said, and he stood by it. He said, "We won that Stanley Cup in spite of Mike Babcock."
Yeah.
And I feel we would have won it if anyone else was coaching, because we were that good and we were that together.
Yeah, the team was stacked.
Yeah, it was stacked. It was such a great team. And he said, we basically banded together against him, and then the stuff that he did to Johan Franzen, who was a good player, a Red Wings player who remained unidentified. They were anonymous when they put this out, said when that whole story broke, I think the quote went something like, Mike Babcock made it his mission to eviscerate Johan Franzen's humanity.
Jesus.
What a quote! Like, how did he get a job after that? Like, a very well-liked dude, Johan Franzen.
Yeah.
And he ruined this guy's life, like, for a while. I hope he's doing well, man. And then he comes to Toronto and takes a young player in Mitch Marner, a guy that they so coveted, Mark Hunter, who was his GM in London, joins the Leafs, and there he is at 4th overall, and they take him, and he's going to be another part of the building. Remember, he's pre-Matthews. He's going to be another key piece of this Leafs rebuild, and he pulls that greasy stunt with him where he makes him write down who he thinks are his 3 least hardest working teammates, and he reads it in front of everybody. Like, why would you do that? What I like this, the tactics he uses, it makes no sense to me. I'm like, what do you think is happening here, Mike, where somehow you doing this makes this situation better? Like, all it's ever been about is him having power and feeling like I'm the most important person in the room. And I say this with all due respect to coaches everywhere in every sport. I have a lot of respect for them. I obviously, my cousin works in the league. I'm thankful for that. You are never the most important person in the room. And I don't care. Go down the line. Scotty Bowman, Vic Lombardi, Jose Mourinho, who I love, any of them, Bill Belichick. You're not the most important person in the room. No one has gone to a sporting event and said, I can't wait to see Bill Belichick put a headset on and coach live. Nobody.
Nobody.
You are not the most important person in the room.
No.
And the problem with Mike Babcock is for years now, he has been allowed and he's been enabled by organizations to feel like he's the most important person in the room. Rewind 7 years. Everybody was like going on plane watch apps to see where he was flying from Detroit. He almost landed in your city.
Yeah.
And then
he was real close. He was real close to being our head
well,
coach.
If you believe the rumors, he basically had a handshake deal with old Terry there, and then the Leafs came calling and he shafted them and said, "No, I'm going to go to Toronto."
I think he just used Buffalo as leverage to up the deal with Toronto.
Of course he did. He uses everything as leverage for Mike Babcock, and that's my problem.
I fucking love how fucking fired up Drury is right
I
now.
hate this guy. I hate this guy.
Him and Terry Pegula would have gotten along real well.
Yeah.
Look, I just can't stand somebody who really at the end of the day, is a farce to the game because they disrespect the game, and no one's bigger than the game. And he thinks he is. And man, the guy couldn't make it to training camp. And I firmly believe this. I really do. And all the quotes have been redug up on July 1st when John Davidson at the press conference said, and I respect John Davidson. He said, we talked to a lot of Hall of Fame worthy people about Mike, about this decision, blah, blah. I'm like, well, did you miss all the Hall of Fame people that can't stand the guy and would have told you to kick rocks if you asked, should we hire this guy? Go down the line. Chris Chelios, Mike Modano, greasy stuff he did to these guys.
What he did in Modano.
Oh, dude, he did Modano so dirty. 6 games left in the season. Detroit's already in the playoffs. He's 3 shy of 1,500. He went to Detroit that year to play 1 year at home. He's a Michigan kid and wanted to play for the Red Wings to end his career. And Mike Babcock couldn't find him a spot on the fourth line, one of the greatest American players ever. Before Patrick Kane, some would say the greatest. Mike Modano, I believe he's third all time in American points. Phil Housley, Pat, and I think him. It's so greasy. He did it to Jason Spezza. Spezza, who's, maybe a borderline Hall of Fame guy. Spezza comes home to Toronto, can't wait to play for the Maple Leafs. And he scratched them for their home opener. Why? This guy thinks constantly he's the smartest guy in the room and he's the most important he's God's gift to coaching, and he's not. So I am tired of it, and I really strongly feel like Jarmo Kekalainen should have been fired. I really do. And I don't like calling for people's jobs. But it is part of this, universe that we cover in sports. People are hired to be fired, and everyone understands that. I really do feel with conviction that Jarmo Kekalainen should have also resigned.
I agree.
This was a terrible decision from the start. No one was in support of it, and no one will ever be in support of this guy showing up in a hockey rink anywhere ever again. And if they are, shame on you, because this guy is a criminal element and I can't stand him.
For context, when Drury first started his epic Babcock rant just now, the Johan Franzen incident, it was an interview, as you stated, I think done in Sweden. Let me see here. In an interview with Expression, Franzen described Babcock as a great coach, but he's a terrible person. The worst I ever met. He's a bully who was attacking people. It could be a cleaner at the arena in Detroit or anybody. He would lay into people without any reason. Asked if a player ever came to him and accused Babcock of abusive behavior, former Wings general manager Ken Holland told the Free Press, no, the answer is no. Okay, Ken. Franzen also confirmed a story Chris Chelios revealed during a episode of the Spit and Chicklets, the podcast that broke this whole story. The incident happened during Game 5 of the Wings 2012 playoff series against Nashville. Some of the things Babcock said to him, referring to Franzen on the bench, I don't know what he said to him behind closed doors one-on-one, but he blatantly verbally assaulted him during the game on the bench. Chelios said it got to the point where poor Johan, no one really knowing he was suffering with the concussion thing and the depression thing, he just broke down and had a nervous breakdown. Not only on the bench, but after the game in one of the rooms in Nashville. It was probably one of the worst things I've ever seen. This is coming from Chris Chelios.
One of the toughest competitors of all time. One of the most
respected American-born players, just players on the just all around. And I know Hurls, you've been waiting for a minute to chime in, so I'll let you get right in here now. But yeah, the word of a guy like Chris Chelios, and you already mentioned it, Zetterberg. The word of Chris, that holds a ton of fucking weight, man. He's not going to bullshit you.
Yeah, I don't have much more to say than Drury so eloquently did. I think we kind of talked about it last week. We knew he was a bad guy for a long time. And the NHLPA did an investigation and they confirmed what we already knew. I guess like Boone Jenner released like a half-hearted statement when this news came out. Like, oh yeah, I was just showing pictures of my family and my wedding and things like that. And Babcock obviously denied it, and the GM and the owner denied it. But when you actually looked into it, you realize that this was obviously true. Like, I think people get on Spittin' Chicklets and other podcasts like that for like maybe like coming up with stories or like maybe fabricating certain things here and there in the name of good content. But this felt so specific and so targeted in a way that they wouldn't have put this on their show if this wasn't true. Like, they have a lot of credibility, as much as people don't want to say it. Like, Paul Bissonnette works for the league now as an analyst on NHL Network with TNT. Ryan Whitney has a lot of friends in the league still. And they told this story in a way that wasn't just superfluous. Like, it was very specific, and it was so specific in a way that it needed to be looked into. And when you got into the nitty-gritty of it, it reaffirmed everything we already thought about Mike Babcock.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't need to go into his character. We all know what that is. I was talking with Duane before this podcast. We were wondering, where does Mike Babcock go from here? Both of us kind of agreed we have no idea. As you said with Bill Peters, does he get a job in juniors? Does he get a job overseas? Like, who would hire this guy? Like, he's 60 years old. It's not like he doesn't have a lot of life left. So I'll be really interested to see. Hopefully we just don't hear from him ever again, and he just kind of like quietly fades into the background.
Yes.
Not to like, yeah, and I'm sure he might, because like that's what happens when you get blacklisted. Not to completely change the subject, but I am going to change the subject. There is a crazy hockey trade rumor that has involving the Sabres that has come out of nowhere in the past 30 minutes. There's this guy on Twitter that I follow. He does Sabres GIFs. He does a lot of Sabres content. Ben Mathewson. He retweeted a guy named Renaud Lavoie. He's a reporter for
Renaud Lavoie.
Yep. He went on a podcast talking about how the Ducks are fed up with Trevor Zegras. Potentially something to be about his attitude. They just want to break down their current rebuild. And he says, I heard there's a team looking that way, and it's the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres have to make the playoffs this season, and you solve your problem by bringing in Zegras.
Ben Matheson, is that
B-M-A-T-H? Mathewson, yeah.
I didn't get that.
So
Could you try?
He translated it from French, and I don't know how much smoke there is to this fire, but if the Sabres are involved in any trade rumors related to Trevor Zegras, I'm going to lose my shit. If you add Trevor Zegras to this Sabres lineup, that is the most fun hockey right now. That is the most fun hockey team of the past 10 years. You put Trevor Zegras with Dylan Cousins, the guy he played against in the World Juniors. You put him on the first line even. You put him on the first power play unit. It's hard to go from Mike Babcock to talking about a guy like Trevor Zegras, but
I see it here. Renaud, who's a great journalist. He works up here for TVA Sports in Quebec, primarily doing Canadiens and Senators coverage, and he's also an NHL Network analyst. They bring him on all the time to talk about those teams. He has an article up on the TVA Sports Twitter feed here about it, and there's Zegras pictured. That would be very interesting. And also, shame on Anaheim. Look, again, I don't know Trevor Zegras personally, obviously. I only know what I see on the ice. He seems like a fun kid. And this, again, just on first impressions, feels like a team with an old school guy in Pat Verbeek running the show, and I got a lot of time for the little ball of hate. But it just feels like an old school guy who doesn't like this new, fun, hip player who's doing stuff that he would never do, and they got to force him out. It feels, it's just goofy. It almost reminds me of like Subban in Montreal. He's too fun. He's too energetic. He's too gregarious. Ovi back in the day. Oh, he celebrates goals too hard and blah. It's like, dude, well, okay, good luck replacing that. Like, Anaheim stinks. Who the hell are they going to replace this guy with? Like, yeah, the Sabres have lots of guys. Who are you asking for? Is it Matt Savoy? Is it Benson? Is it like, those are the level of guys you would assume Anaheim would be wanting back if they're smart. This does, like, for the Sabres, it would be a really fun addition, of course. And I almost wonder if Zegras wouldn't just be a winger, if he wouldn't play up on that top line with Thompson. Can you imagine him feeding Tage in the slot? That's a lot of fun. Yeah. But from Anaheim's perspective, this makes, you know what this is? It's the Samueli family not wanting to pay Trevor Zegras over $8 million. That's all this is.
He's worth every money too.
And they're probably, dude, we're talking about Anaheim here, and with all due respect, it's Anaheim. They always rank in the bottom third, bottom sixth, typically, in attendance. If they get rid of Zegras, who I bet you on any given night, if you go to the Duck Pond, every third jersey is a Zegras jersey. This will be like Ohtani leaving the Angels. It will crater fan interest.
They're going to lose both. And let me tell you a little something about Anaheim. Nothing really goes on down there. I've been to Orange County many times in my 8 years in California. I mean, the fan interest is there, but like, it's essentially just
only if they're really good.
Yeah, it's a suburb of LA. Like, nobody's really interested in any professional sports. I know there are fans in Anaheim, and I excuse those that are really passionate. Pardon me, those that are, but like, it's a bad market to have two, let alone one professional sports team. I know they had a lot of good hockey teams back in the day with Chris Pronger and Paul Kariya and J.S. Shigure, and they won their cups, and the Angels won a World Series. But it just doesn't seem like they have the ownership in either case to really go for it in any instance, because they're always competing with the LA teams. Like, it's hard to get fans for the LA teams. Like, the only team that's actually popular in all of Los Angeles is the Lakers. The only team that has legitimate and the Dodgers, legitimate diehard fans. Like, nobody cares about the football teams. Nobody cares about the Kings. Nobody cares about anything else. So to have that like environment already, and also putting it in the suburbs where people definitely don't care about it, it's a bad matchup. And like you said, I mean, this kind of goes back to the Babcock discussion, but like, Trevor Zegras is the poster boy of the new age in the NHL of trying ridiculous moves. He executed against the Sabres, the flip pass over the net to Sonny Milano that he whacked in out of the air. That was one of the greatest highlights of the 21-22 season.
Yep.
He's done the Michigan in-game, I think, twice now. He has a swagger about him. I think of him before that World Junior game against Canada a few years ago, where he did that interview walking into the arena. He was just like, yeah, we're going to go in, we're going to get him to the corners, and we're going to beat him. And they did. And they won 2-0, and he was the best player in the game. Having a guy with that amount of confidence and skill and swagger on a team like the Sabres, who already have, I think, it seems like 8 to 10 of those guys, with a guy like Zach Benson coming up, That would be unbelievable. It would be
Who do
the
you
perfect
trade?
fit.
What do you trade for him?
So I was going to mention this. Ben also offered a potential package, which I think would be really good. And this also includes a guy we've talked about for months now in John Gibson. He says UPL, Olofsson, one of the non-Benson prospects, so that would include Savoy, and a pick for Zegras, Gibson, and 50% retained. So obviously they're over Gibson at this point, and bringing in Gibson to the Sabres would be a really good fit. Bringing in a guy who still has something left, giving you that veteran, solid goaltender that you need to pair Devin Levi with over the next 2 to 3 seasons. You have to give up a top prospect, which the Sabres have in bunches. At this point, like, they lucked into Zach Benson. So if you give up anyone not named Zach Benson, you're fine with it. UPL obviously would be expendable. He's already is expendable given what we think of Devin Levi. And we already thought Victor Olofsson was going to be traded. So any type of package like this, and I don't know how the Ducks would feel about it. Maybe they would want more, but like, that's a lot to give up for a guy like Trevor Zegras. So,
And I know there's a lot of excitement around like Savoy and Benson and potentially playing together because obviously they played in the WHL together for their entire junior career, and the success they've had is unbelievable. But I agree, any non-Benson prospect is really up for grabs. And
at this point, the concept of Savoy and Benson playing together is maybe not even next season.
Yeah,
like if that potentially could be.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Like, great if it happens, but if you could package a Savoy into a deal that brings you Trevor freaking Zegras on this team, like where he'll actually be appreciated.
Yeah, like, I hope that there's actually smoke to this fire. Like, I hope Kevin Adams is being aggressive in the way he's thinking about the future of this team. If you could bring in a legitimate superstar right now to add to this lineup, especially with Jack Quinn out for the first possibly 5 months.
That was my next point, is you're going to be without Quinn for the first couple months.
You're Olofsson, who you didn't even want to be on the team. So
yeah,
I really hope he's being aggressive. A lot of people feel like the Sabres didn't do enough this offseason. In the back of my mind, I'm one of them. I think Connor Clifton is a nice addition. I think Eric Johnson is a nice addition. I think Devin Levi is only going to improve. But they did not add to their forward group. They're running it back. Which
I think us, the fan. Oh, go ahead.
One of the better forward groups in the league last year. But it's still kind of unproven. So,
yeah, well, unproven in the sense of getting over the playoff hump. But they score a lot of goals. What they have, the 4th best goals per game last year,
yeah,
3rd or 4th,
but like
real elite offensive team.
You have to think that's like not necessarily sustainable either, though. Like, they had
probably not.
No, they had like three 9-goal games. Tage Thompson had 5 goals in one game. They also had a few nights where they got shut out. I mean, I know what happens with these hockey seasons.
Yeah.
But I guess my overall point is that we wanted Kevin Adams to be aggressive at the trade deadline in February to get the team over the hump to make the playoffs. He got Riley Stillman. He got Jordan Greenway. Good pickups. Jordan Greenway is probably a third liner this season. Riley Stillman's probably not even going to be in your top 6. I want him to think aggressively in a way that uses years and years and years of suffering that has resulted in them building this prospect pipeline that they now have the luxury of having into getting a guy like this, a 21-year-old stud that could change the face of your franchise for years to come. Like, that would send a shockwave through the NHL if the Sabres traded for Trevor Zegras. So
it would.
Could you imagine, like, honestly, imagine 2 years ago we had Jack Eichel, unhappy, the neck, not the neck thing, like a downplay, was a serious injury, but like, the trade request, and then the post, the off season remarks about there being disconnect, and then the off season where it's just like, when is he getting traded? Where is he getting traded? The god awful just back and forth with Rangers fans for seemingly months. A billboard in downtown Buffalo off the 190 that some dickhead Ranger fans paid for that said aren't trade requests like a pain in the neck, and it was like a caricature of Jack Eichel with his froey hair. Like, it was on the 190 in Buffalo, and we had to drive past it every day for 2 weeks. Like, all this shit. Could you imagine going from that nonsense, and in 2 years, you have a perennial potential 50-goal scorer in Tage Thompson? You have these guys like Dylan Cousins who are coming to their own to be, potential 40-goal scorers, 80-point guys. Alex Tuck showing he's a true leader and can be a captain of this team. Darling really finally developing into a Norris candidate level defenseman. Owen Power coming into his own potentially to have a huge breakout year. And now you're going to add Trevor Zegras to this from where we were 2 years ago to now. This is insane.
So I'm getting a tiny bit of pushback on calling him a superstar, namely from my friends who sent this to me. He's 21 years old. So while he may not be I think Dylan Cousins is a more complete player than Trevor Zegras, he can only get better, right? Especially if you put him in a situation that's not the Anaheim Ducks.
Correct.
You put him on a line potentially with Alex Tuck and Tage Thompson, or you put him with Dylan Cousins, eventually Zach Benson. This kid's only going to improve. And you put him in a system like Don Granado's that favors this type of creative offensive playmaking and expression. Correct. And look what it's done for Jeff Skinner's game. Obviously, he was a good goal scorer before Ralph Kruger put him in jail. But while he may not be an A1 Tage Thompson level superstar, he's still arguably potentially a top 20 player in the game. Maybe not player, but top 20 forward if he reaches his potential. I don't know. I just think his style of play and the creativity that he possesses and the skill that he possesses potentially could be a really, really good fit. It's obviously not going to solve your problem of being physical and that playoff type of player that the Sabres have needed for so long, but hopefully that they work on that with their third and fourth lines, potentially even at the trade deadline this year. I don't know. I think if you look at your prospect pipeline, you look at the guys that you could potentially trade, even potentially getting a guy like John Gibson, I think you really take a hard look at that if you're Kevin Adams.
Oh, for sure. That's why I was glad that broke while we were on air, because we get your live reaction here at Two Goalies, One Mike. And remember, this is brought to you by Outlet Liquor, the place to buy a case on Georgia Boulevard. Man, I need more information to come out.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously,
more information to come out.
This is just a kind of looks like a shoddy translation of a French podcast, but like Drury said, Renaud Lavoie he's a respected journalist. This is not this is not a random bot on Twitter.
Yeah. This isn't some guy. Renaud has been doing great work in covering the game for a long time. He, especially in Quebec, where they've got TVA is their sports station. That's the Quebec sports network. TVA Sports is that's their TNT. That it's a big deal, and he's worked there and done great work for a long time. Yeah, it's not some guy. And I agree with everything you're saying. For people that say that Zegras isn't a superstar, people just go generally, oh, well, he's never scored 100 points, so he's not a superstar. He is, though. And when you look at Anaheim, he is the core and the face of their franchise right now. And the skill level he has, even on that power play, he has rare vision and rare hands. He's done it at every level where he can make incredible jaw-dropping plays. And, again, this just kind of feels like old man yelling at the cloud syndrome, where people are oh, yeah, he does the Michigan, but it's, Torts was goofing on him, I think, in his rookie year. Oh, yeah, it's goofy. You can't win with guys like this. I don't have time for that argument, really, when it comes to dudes like him, because they said that about my favorite player ever for years. And it's just not true. The game is a team game, and this guy adds value to whatever roster he's on because of his skill set. And listen, with all due respect to the guys he's been playing with down there, it's not exactly like he's had a bunch of guys to help him out. Yes, they got a lot of prospects on the way, but not currently playing with him. Like it's been him and a lot of dudes, so, you can be the most skilled guy and pass the puck. If guys aren't cashing it in and you're not playing with players that are at your caliber of being able to think the game like him, because he's a rare talent. Like he thinks the game in such a different way and approaches playing the game in such a different way that if you can't keep up with that, it's not going to lend to him putting up 95 points. But pairing him with a bunch of guys on the Sabres would, if he's putting it on Tage Thompson's tape back door, it's going in the net. And he doesn't play with a lot of guys like that in Anaheim. As far as John Gibson goes, I've said this numerous times. I have arguments with guys in my like fantasy hockey league all the time, because they're obviously looking at it from like a fantasy value, but from a real life value, I still strongly believe, and maybe I'm biased because I watched him play junior and I've seen his career, I still strongly believe John Gibson's one of the most talented goaltenders in the NHL.
He had a game with 70 saves last season. Like he still has it.
Dude, this guy's not old. What's he, 31?
Yeah.
Maybe 32. Like when people are constantly going, oh, if you're over 30 in sports now, you're old. I understand, but like this guy, first of all, he hasn't had to play a ton of playoff games the last number of years. And second of all, in terms of raw skill, he is one of the most skilled and capable goaltenders out there. And I think leaving Anaheim for him in particular would breathe new life into his career, and he could put up a monstrous season. I still believe he's that good. I've always wondered, ever since the rumors about him started coming out last year, I've always wondered, Pittsburgh Penguins, guys from Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Don't know what they really have in Jari. He's pretty hit and miss. Casey DeSmith is gone. Kyle Dubas is very aggressive. There were rumors about Dubas maybe being interested in Gibson in his time in Toronto. They went the Anderson route. I wonder about that. However, if he was part of the package as well for the Sabres, like what a guy to pair with young Devin Levi. I still think John Gibson has a lot of value.
I couldn't agree with you more. Like, guy's got a lot of miles on him, not because he's old, but because like just the amount of pucks he's taken over the past, 5-6 years. That team is just kind of like, I wouldn't say in the exact same situation that Buffalo's been in, but like trying to find direction, rebuilding, developing through the draft. They've been slowly trying to build something successful there. And in the meantime, you have a goalie that's ready to win now, not later. And he's just been taking a ton of pucks. But to your point, he's still very, very good. And whether it's in Buffalo or, I listened to the After the Whistle podcast earlier today. They even said, like, what do you do with the Pittsburgh Penguins once, Malkin and Crosby are gone? They're going to be in the same situation that they were before, the Crosby, draft when they won that lottery. It's like
they're in for a lot of pain.
They were in bankruptcy. They couldn't get fans to come to games. So do they try and milk whatever they can that's left in Crosby and Malkin, go get John Gibson? Who knows? I don't know. Like, that would be a good destination for him. But I digress. I love the idea of Trevor Zegras in a Buffalo Sabres uniform for all the points both you and Earls made. He's dynamic. His vision is damn near second to none. He's just so much fun to watch. I know, like, you hear the cliche sayings and say it's like hockey podcast. He's an electric factor. He is. Everything the kid does, it's just exciting to watch, and he does it with ease. It's like, he's a video game. He's a cheat code. And
yeah. I watched a lot of him leading up to that draft with Cousins, and his highlight tape, if anyone wants to go on YouTube, watch, his junior highlight tape. His biggest thing was his passing. Like some of his like vision behind the back passes, backdoor. Obviously, you're doing this in juniors, but he's at least like done a little bit of it in the NHL. Obviously, he's had a lot of highlight reel goals, but his playmaking is his biggest strength. And if you add that to the amount of goal scorers that are currently on this team that also have playmaking skills, but having that be his biggest strength to the top of this lineup, obviously Zach Benson is a guy in a similar vein. Him coming out of the draft, I think Micah Blake ranked him as one of the best playmakers he's ever tracked, not named Connor McDavid.
His hands are outrageous.
Exactly. So
they're so good.
You add that, like obviously, if Zach Benson doesn't make the team this year, he's going to make it next year. You add Zach Benson and Trevor Zegras to Alex Tuck, Dylan Cousins, Tage Thompson, Jeff Skinner, JJ Peterka, Jack Quinn. That's a Stanley Cup contender.
Yeah, 100%.
Along with Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin and Matthias Samuelsson and hopefully Devin Levi being a top 10 goalie in the league. That is a insane lineup of hockey players.
You want to know what that reminds me of so much? It's just those 05 to 07 Sabres teams, how deep they were. Derek Roy,
so many good players.
That Derek Roy, Max, and Vanek before Chris and Danny Briere left, they were the third line. They were the third line.
Yeah, they were deep, man.
Like Quinn and Peterka would be on the third line. That's how deep this team is going to be, and their first and second round picks. It's really wild to think about, and it's exciting because like this is the type of rumor that we need to get us to the season. To be honest, thinking about this type of thing, and as we said, like I really hope it's legitimate. Like if Kevin Adams wasn't looking into this, I think he would be doing a disservice to his team. He would be doing a disservice to the fan base if he at least didn't call and be like, okay, like obviously the return is going to be big. What's it going to take? Make that call. And if it's too big, it's too big. If they want Zach Benson, then you say no. If they want like 3 first-round picks, Zach Benson, UPL, Olofsson, everything else.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
And here's the thing too is, we knew it with Eichel is there was smoke here. It was created by Jack, but there were rumors before then, and that drives down trade value. It just does. If a team is upset with a player or a player is upset with a team, I'm not saying that you're gonna steal, make out like bandits in this trade. But at the end of the day, like, are you ever gonna get the true value for Trevor Zegras if these rumors are true? Probably not. You're just not.
I just wonder what the point of this all is, like from Anaheim's standpoint.
Yeah.
Like if this is true and what they're upset with him, like I need more context there too. Like, what does that mean? Yeah. They're upset that he's asking for what he's worth, or they don't want to pay him because look, like the Samuelis, like they've done a good job keeping that team afloat, but afloat is a generous term that I'm using, and they are, they're one of the smaller ownership groups in the league. I understand that, and they're notoriously cheap, but man, you mentioned the word rebuild there, which is what they're in the midst of, and I know, Buffalo fans know a lot about that word. What's the point of this? Like, if the point is to rebuild, gather as much talent as possible, and then start to turn it into taking additional assets, filling out holes in your lineup, and building your roster back to respectability and a winning hockey team, trading away Trevor Zegras sets you back 2, if not 3 steps. I like Matt Savoy and whoever else, could be involved in the deal, but you do go backwards here if you're Anaheim. And I think it's old man yelling at the cloud syndrome. We don't like him because he looks like he's having fun playing hockey? Is that why we don't like him? Look, because he's fun?
supposed to be a job.
That sucks, eh? Oh, it sucks to have fun playing hockey and be entertaining and be different and a little against the grain and make jaw-dropping plays so that people have fun watching the game. Because, look, I understand coach, they want to win. They need to win. The teams want to win. You do need elite talent in any sport in some capacity, at least, to win. I just don't understand. They ignore a lot that this is an entertainment product. And no one understands that better than the NFL. Dude, the NFL, do you realize that like the NFL and the NBA currently has a lot of guys who they have no problem being outspoken and saying quote unquote controversial things, outrageous statements. Travis Kelce's dating Taylor Swift now. Like, do you realize
that's been a big topic at TMZ Sports the past couple weeks?
Dude, Travis Kelce, a guy that a lot of people who don't watch sports have probably never heard of, are hearing his name constantly. And the NFL benefits from that. Because Swifties, and I am a Swiftie. I like Taylor.
No,
not the country stuff. I'm not country Swiftie. I'm 1989 and forward. That being said, I'm sure I surprised some people there.
I'm surprised this is where we've gotten on this podcast. This is great.
My point is, it's entertainment. And people that don't pay attention necessarily to the NFL, but like Taylor Swift, are now going to go, what's up with this Kelce guy? Maybe it turns into some fan engagement. Who knows? The NFL and NBA have players currently, including Travis Kelce, who actively do podcasts like this one to engage fans. Travis Kelce and his brother Jason, who's one of the greatest centers of all time, the week before they played each other in the Super Bowl last year, did a podcast episode. People were like, well, I guess we're not going to get an episode of the I can't remember what it's called.
It's New Heights.
Yeah. People are like, oh, I guess we won't get it. They did an episode the week before they played each other for the championship. So entertaining. I think it got like 7 million downloads the day after it came out.
It's incredible.
Danny
Every
Green
episode
does a
they do is
podcast.
amazing.
Dude, it's such a good show. There's no NHL guys. And I'm not saying that we need hockey. I don't think Sidney Crosby and Ovechkin need to do it, although I'd watch that. I'm not saying that current players need to do it, but look at the engagement it creates and the basically free marketing that they're giving the sport. The NHL has nothing like that. And Trevor Zegras would actually be a guy, and PK Subban before him, that I could see doing something like that. But they won't, because hockey, it's all, and I love aspects of it, but this league will always be an afterthought in the United States compared to the other leagues.
Yep.
Because they squash stuff like this. And they take a guy with a personality like Trevor Zegras and they go, oh, he's having too much fun, you guys. What can we do to make him not do the extra dangle over the blue line? And look, I get it. There's merit to some of that. Yes, he does. Maybe he does do too much with the puck sometimes, but we don't like the flip over the net thing, even though it resulted in a goal, a positive thing for his team. I don't know if you know this, but you need to score goals to win hockey games, and it resulted in a goal. And we don't like the Michigan, even though it was a goal and it helped his team win, and he had fun. And so many people watched that clip of him the first time he did the Michigan, the Buffalo shootout goal last year. That's what people watch.
Yeah.
And if the NHL and people around there and the Ducks, they don't like it because he's too flashy, he's having too much fun. Yeah, God forbid we have too much fun and people actually want to watch our damn sport. What a joke. If they trade him, if the Anaheim Ducks trade him, fold them. That like I'm so tired of this. Like, it's so lame.
I mean,
please.
It's funny though because like they're not even the most eligible franchise to be moved right now in the American Southwest. Like the Arizona Coyotes play in a college stadium. Like it's kind of embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. And to your point about NHL players not being marketable, like it's kind of on them too. Like Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce do that podcast on their own. Like they created this production company and now they have a legitimate team of editors and producers that do that podcast for them. Like,
yes,
to your point, like Trevor Zegras would be the guy to do it. He has the personality. He has the look. Him and Jack Hughes, anyone else, like any young guy with personality, like in the Travis Kelce mold, that would be the person to do this type of thing. And I do think that's coming because you have these guys that are coming up in the league, like Zach Benson as well, who are playing with creativity. They're having fun out on the ice. They're not these grizzled old veterans that clutch and grab all the way down the ice and don't like to talk to the media. Even look at Devin Levi. You were saying how hockey players are the most vanilla interviews ever. Like, listen to Devin Levi's post-game interviews in his first 7 games with the Sabres. He goes in depth to his mindset, to how he feels about the game. Maybe that's just because he was excited in his first 7 games as a rookie. But I honestly believe, like, that's who he is as a person. We've had him on this podcast, and you listen to him talk there. He's an insightful, intelligent, interesting person. And I do believe that those personalities exist in the NHL. Unfortunately, I don't think Connor McDavid is one of them. Even if he was in a bigger market, not in Edmonton and not on national TV more than he is, I just don't think he's that guy. But no. Jack Hughes and Trevor Zegras are that guy. They are exactly the mold of a marketable superstar that you want.
But they won't let them. That's the problem. Like the Kelce stuff and all that, they allow those and Danny Green and there are a few other guys in the NBA that have podcasts too. LeBron's been on a bunch. I think LeBron has a podcast.
He's got like 17 shows.
Yeah. Like, yeah, of course he does. But of course he does. And like my point is, I don't need everybody to do it, but the few that show up that have a little bit of, a little bit of spark to their personality. I don't need Connor McDavid to do a podcast. And if hockey players come along or athletes in lots of sports come along that aren't talkative, I don't care. It's just that this league constantly shoots itself in the foot by trying to silence in a way. And it's done in a very like quiet way. It's done through criticism of people around the game. And like, I don't think anybody goes right to a guy like Zegras and says, hey, shut up, or don't do that. Don't be on the cover of a video game. It's not that. It's this quiet part of the culture where it's like, don't make it seem like you think you're a big deal, right? Like, don't make it seem. And that's part of the hockey culture where you can still be a big personality, but also be a good teammate. Like, it doesn't mean that you think you're better than everybody. It's just who you are.
Yeah.
And why is that a bad thing? And why is it a bad thing that people want to gravitate toward that energy and buy your jersey and, buy a ticket package to come watch you play? And like not everybody has to do it. It's just that there are some guys out there who could, like last year, EA Sports NHL, which is one of the worst made video games on planet Earth right now. They need so much help. They put him on the cover. If I was working for like the Ducks PR or EA or something, or the league, I would have been like, you know what we should do? We should take Trevor Zegras around to different places and have him play fans in NHL and live stream it on Twitch.
Would make sense.
I don't think I'm the smartest person in the world. I really don't. I'm not Mike Babcock, but I just came up with that out of my ass. Like That was something I just literally came up with off the top of my head. But they don't do this stuff. The NHL is so weird. And they've got dinosaurs running it. People that are completely fine with the way it is. And they get old Gare Bear. He constantly comes out and is like, we're trying to raise the profile of the league. We're trying to raise the profile of the league. Well, so hitch on to some of these guys and do it. Because you're not being forward thinking. You're not having guys do stuff that would be interesting. The only reason that guys like Devin Levi ever do it and people go, oh, that's neat, is because they're goalies. We're willing to let the goalies be goofy because the goalies are different humans, right? We'll let them. That's why so many analysts are former goalies. Jamie Noodles McLennan, Marty Biron, because they're interesting dudes. Dwayne Steinel, right?
This is why this is such a good podcast. We're so insightful.
It's a bunch of goalies and some guy from Canada. But like, I just don't understand it. Like, they're like, they have little brother syndrome, but then they don't do anything to tangibly change it and make people want to engage with the game. They'll do weird stuff. Like, do you guys remember a couple years ago, this feels like it was a decade ago, when like they randomly announced that that league was partnering with Green Day? Do you guys remember that?
I remember that.
I remember that.
And like Green Day played, I swear to God, it was in Anaheim because they're from Orange County. They played outside the stadium, and then no one ever heard from Green Day ever again. It was like, what was that?
It's really bizarre. Like, and I mean, to your point about Gary Bettman, he doesn't care.
He's a loser, dude.
In the same vein as Mike Babcock, Gary Bettman does not give a shit about the NHL.
He's paid not to.
Exactly. So
here's about the owners, and that's it.
And the owners want to make money. They're
He's
all
a lawyer.
Old. Like, look at our owner and the allegations against him right now, which are probably true.
Terry, you might have to drill another well now.
Exactly. I mean, I do believe he wants to win. I do believe he cares about this team. But as you mentioned, there are a lot of dinosaurs. And to your point, though, like, I do believe a guy like Trevor Zegras could just start his own podcast. Like, I like if he got traded to the Sabres, I think the Sabres are forward thinking of enough now with Kevin Adams and Don Granato at the helm, with this young, exciting culture, that if he went to them and said, like, I want to do this like once or twice a month on my YouTube channel, live stream it on my Twitter and my Instagram, have players visiting from other cities, talk about life on the road. Like, look at what Spittin' Chicklets is. It's two former NHL players, and it's so popular. Obviously, they have the Barstool brand behind them, but like, it is two former players who played in the league, and look at the intel they get. Look at the stories that they have.
And it's because the players, when we'll go back to the Babcock thing for a second. The players trust them because they were players, and they're more they know the culture more recently than these dinosaurs that we keep talking about. Like,
they also treat people well.
Biz was on Agent Provocateur, I think it was today or maybe yesterday, with Ellen Walsh and Adam Wild. Sorry. And he mentioned, like, why do people go to Biz, for this? Why don't they go to the NHLPA or something like that? Because, well, they're afraid of being blackballed by these dinosaurs that, don't understand this generation and its way of thinking. And they're, these guys have so much power and control over them. And he goes, so they come to guys like Biz. They come to guys like guys that they can trust. They tell them these things so they can be the ones that break the story. And I get it.
They're like-minded, right? Like, they understand what it's like to be a player.
And listen. Do I think there's a problem in hockey culture? Absolutely, 100%. It's non-negotiable. Sports culture, yes. But as much as we want to shake our fists at it, as much as, like, I've been in so many locker rooms. Girls, you've been in so many locker rooms. Drury, you've been around the game too. Like, is it ever going to fully change? No, it's not. It's just not. And we can point the fingers at guys like Biz and Witt all they want. It's just the way they are. It's just the way they are. And hopefully we get to a point in the game where guys like Don Cherry, who call the Carolina Hurricanes a bunch of jerks because they do a post-game celebration, or whoever wants to criticize guys like Trevor Zegras.
And by the way, their arena had never been fuller.
Yeah, exactly. And, guys who, want to criticize Trevor Zegras because he's having fun out there and he's smiling, he's being creative, doing things that are causing, going viral. Like, yeah, we need to get away from those people who hate that. But will the game ever be the way everybody wants it to be? This is clean cut. No, it's not going to. I'm sorry, it's not going to be that. It never will be. But the sooner we get away from these people that we constantly have been talking about during this episode, the better. The better, for sure. But it'll never be perfect for everybody. It just won't be.
We don't need it to be perfect, but I do think that there is an avenue where it can be an environment that is, built on being respectful and enjoying the product for what it is.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because the game itself, like the game that we watch is great. I think it's the greatest sport on earth. I'd watch it I'd watch the worst hockey game over the best of anything else any day of the week. I love the game. It's so good. God, it's such a good sport.
And it's so underappreciated. And
yes.
Okay, so I'm personal.
We can get to a place where it's not, and people enjoy it, and people feel like they can be themselves and succeed and be a good athlete. Like, we don't need everybody to be the, a poster boy for how we should all act, but we can reasonably expect people be respectful and allow people to thrive in this environment and not be chastised for it. And that's not impossible.
And listen, I won't say his name on the podcast, but I'm personal friends with a current Bills player who, loves hockey. And he flat out says, dude, you go to a game, you can hit people as hard as you want. It's on open ice, how fast they're going. Just, you're shooting pucks over 100 miles an hour. He goes, I love going to games and watching. And you might probably even get some talking about he's been at a lot of games. But it's such a marketable. It really is. When you have guys like that are going, I love the game. It's because it's a marketable game, but the people are trying to market it are just so out of their league and so out of their time. You need.
No, they stink.
They stink, exactly.
They stink at it, and that's a crazy thing too. As I'll close my thoughts on the subject, and I hope the Sabres get Zegras for you guys.
Yes.
That's the wild thing. You hear other athletes in North America, and a lot, when people ask them, hey, what sport do you like watching, or who do you guys really respect? Almost all of them are man, these hockey players are unbelievable. The other athletes see it, but the people that aren't familiar with the game don't see it and can't connect with it because the league holds itself back.
Yeah.
And until that changes, I don't know.
Not to get back into the nitty gritty of Zegras here, but let's say this is real. One more final point on it. Let's say it is real, and let's say it happens, and you give this massive trade package, and you bring Trevor Zegras in. You're eventually going to have to sign him to a contract. He hasn't gotten a big deal yet, like Tage Thompson, Dylan Cousins. Maybe he got one after his entry level. But are you going to bring Trevor Zegras in to pay him more than Dylan Cousins and Tage Thompson? It's something you have to think about. Because arguably, I just did the Hockey Reference compare player tool with Dylan Cousins and Trevor Zegras. And it's the player that you compare them to because they're the same draft class. They were Captain America and the captain of Canada's World Junior team. He might not have been captain, but he was one of their best players in that World Junior tournament. Cousins went 2 picks before him. They have basically the same amount of games played in their careers. Zegras has 20 more points in 20 less games played. It would be, I just don't know what it would do to the locker room to bring in a guy like that. And I mean, obviously Dylan Cousins and Tage Thompson took their deals before their breakout, basically at $7 million a year. But what do you pay Trevor Zegras if you bring him in? Like, how does that affect your salary cap? Like, these are obviously things you need to think about. And maybe that's a future you problem. You just bring in Trevor Zegras and you figure it out. But that's like a legitimate discussion because like people are arguing that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Dylan Cousins is a more complete player. Which
Good thing the cap's going up.
Yeah. I mean, that's
you'd have to figure some stuff out.
Well, that's the thing too. Is like you're always everybody's market value is going up every single season. Like Dahlin's probably getting 10.5 to not probably will get between 10.5 and 11 million a year. Where you have Cale Makar who's making 9. Like it's just, maybe you're not in the same locker room, but there's always somebody in the league that's making more money than you that shouldn't be. Like Tage Thompson had a better year, in my opinion, than Austin Matthews last year. And Austin Matthews got paid $13.5 million.
Yeah, and he's making 7.7 or 7.8.
Yeah, 7.1. I think 7.1 or 7.2. Maybe, and again, if this locker room is as close knit as they perceived, like we perceive them to be, maybe you're Kevin Adams, you just sit them both down, like, hey, I want to have this conversation with you. We have an opportunity to bring this guy into this team. Dylan, you're familiar with him. You've played with him. You've succeeded with him.
And by all accounts, they seem like they're super cool with each other too.
Yes.
So yeah,
I don't think they would have a problem with it.
No,
honestly,
that's a conversation I think you can.
I think they'd say, "Do this deal, Kevin."
Yeah, I would hope that they make the team better. Right?
The team better.
Is it going to be a problem if we have to pay him $8 million a year? With you two being possibly more productive players for this team, if we have to pay him $8 million a year, are you guys going to have a problem with that?
I mean, and like it happens all the time in the NFL. Look what they just did to Patrick Mahomes. Joe Burrow got that contract to be the highest paid player in NFL history. And then a week later, they restructured Mahomes' contract.
Yeah, everybody is getting more money than someone.
No, but like what I'm saying is that like it can be done. Like you can you can restructure Tage Thompson's deal to give him more incentives, to front load it, like to do different things. It's just something was brought up on Twitter that my friend Jack sent to me, which I think is a good topic because like you need.
I will say this before they even think about doing this. You need to get Dahlin and Power done now.
I think honestly, I really do believe that they're both done and they'll announce them before the season. I really do.
I hope
and
so.
like they wouldn't be able to restructure his deal now, but when he comes up again, they would obviously, say like, because the NHL has fully guaranteed contracts, which is, one of the few good things they have over the NFL, is that, that money's guaranteed. It's locked in. But when he comes up again, because he's still young, like that's when you go, hey, maybe we build this type of incentive in, we front load you some money, whatever it is, like you said, when his next deal comes up. Because that's the thing, like Ray Ferraro, always said it best, whenever he's been on his podcast or on Overdrive. I love Ray. I think he's one of the best. When you sign your deal, you're happy with it then. So don't get all angry when the market changes, especially if you sign a big, long deal and, and then another guy gets a little more than you. You liked your deal when you signed it. Yeah. You've got a great opportunity to earn a lot of money if you're these guys, right? And change your life.
It's a really good point. Also,
if I'm Tage Thompson and I make 7.5 and Trevor comes in, makes our team better, fits in, gels well, helps us win a bunch of games, maybe a cup, and he makes 9, say, I don't give a rat's ass. I'm cashing 7.1 on July 1st.
Especially in Buffalo, New York. So
yeah, dude, like, come on. Who cares? I tend to agree.
I know, Drew, you've never been here, but Connor, Hurls, you mentioned Trevor Zegras down on Chippewa at like Rec Room on a Saturday night, 2 o'clock in the
That
morning.
dude would clean up.
I'm just telling you that every aspect of this is just so fun. Like, people are, I'm kind of live reacting to this because this happened while we were on air. I'm live reacting to all of Sabres Twitter, like going through every single possibility of this. And they're saying like, well, if you bring in Trevor Zegras, like you're not addressing your main concern with your hockey team right now, which is goal prevention. Well, they kind of did that this offseason by bringing Connor Clifton. Obviously, Eric Johnson's just kind of here for stability right now, but they're going to do that hopefully at the trade deadline and next offseason as well. They're absolutely going to do that. But if you have the opportunity to get Trevor Zegras right now and you play on the upside that you already have, which is offensive upside and scoring goals, and if you score more goals than the other team, Devin Levi's not going to care if you win game 6-4.
No, he's already said that.
He's not going to give a shit.
He doesn't care.
Like, he just wants to win games. He doesn't care about his stats, especially when he's a young guy like that. He's a competitive person. Even after that Red Wings game that they won 7-6 in a shootout, he was just like, obviously I want a couple back, but like, it is what it is. Outscore the other team.
Yep. He said there's nothing wrong with a little adversity. I remember that like vividly.
I just think
smiling the entire time.
Exactly. So obviously he has a good head on his shoulders, and of course, like, goaltending is a very tough position, and we all know that. But like,
you're not going to tell me that bringing in Trevor Zegras, guess what? You're going to possess the puck more. Sometimes playing defense is just playing offense. You know what I mean? Like, you possess.
He'll draw penalties.
Keep it in their zone.
Yeah.
I think everything about it, as long as they don't want Zach Benson, makes sense. If they want Zach Benson, it's probably off the table, but that's fine. Then you have Zach Benson next year. So, I don't know.
Moving on, because obviously we were not expecting this.
Yeah, it's a bombshell.
Rumor to break. It is the definition of a bombshell for sure. But there is a new sheriff in Boston. Brad Marchand announced as the next captain. Many people expected that. But well-deserved, I guess. I would assume he's been a leader for that team. He's been a grimy leader, but a leader nonetheless. And I don't know who else you would have given it to.
Pasternak.
Pasternak, sure.
I think they should have given it to Pasternak. In my opinion, Brad Marchand is a dirty player. He has been for years. And that's a bad example to set for the young guys coming up in your organization. I know fans in Boston love him. I know their play-by-play announcer, who's also a rat, loves him. But I personally hate Brad Marchand. So, no, I don't think it's
You wouldn't want him on the Sabres?
No, I wouldn't. Honestly. No,
get the fuck out of here.
I think I really do believe he's a rat, and he's a dirty player. And he does things on the ice that go outside like your normal like view of the game. Yeah, of course he's a great player and he'd be good on the Sabres, but that's not going to happen. So I'm not even like concerning myself with that possibility. I think David Pasternak would have been a better captain, but that's me.
I think McAvoy will end up being the captain because Brad is getting up there too. And eventually I think McAvoy will end up being the captain there. I understand. I've had this argument with Dark Guy for years. Anytime Marchand comes up, yeah, he's a grease bag on the ice. However, everything that you hear about him off the ice is that he's a great teammate, works extremely hard, and does set a good example in terms of the work ethic that it takes to be a great NHL player and a consistent player for the young guys. McAvoy's even said that, and so has Pasternak. So, and they just broke a record last year. Yeah, it didn't end well for them, but like, he is a key cog in that. I do understand your sentiment though, because for other fan bases, he might be at the top of everyone's shit list. And I completely understand why. The licking thing, like all that, it's just the greasy spears, the greasy slew foots. Yeah, I don't have a lot of time for that stuff. However, if you told me tomorrow he could be a Washington Capital, where do I sign? Like, I want him on my team.
Yeah, and I probably would too. That I probably just have so much hatred from watching him over the years.
I understand. I
Yeah,
completely respect where you're coming from. I guess I'm coming at this from a perspective of a guy who has a guy that plays for his favorite team that a lot of people kicked around and said should be kicked out of the league because he hits people too hard.
Tom Wilson.
And hey, Tom deserved every suspension he got, except the most recent one, which funnily enough was against the Boston Bruins. That was a joke suspension.
Agreed.
Who'd he hit? Brandon Carlo, I want to say. That suspension was an absolute joke. However, he deserved all the other ones, but he won a Stanley Cup. And that's all I care about at the end of the day.
I mean, and Marchand did too, but like what, back in 2011?
Yes, he did.
Yes,
and he was a third line player on that team. No one even back then thought he was going to turn into this.
Yeah, for sure.
But I saw this coming from a mile away.
I like your point about McAvoy too. Like a guy, like how many more years is Marchand going to be there? 2, 3? We'll see where his career goes. And I think the Bruins are an interesting discussion this year. Like, I don't think their lineup is particularly scary this season. Obviously, they have really good defense
on the wing. It is, but
really good goaltending still. But like, they're not last season's team. That's for sure. They're going to be good.
Who's
still
playing center?
Yeah.
Who's
Pavel
playing
Zacha's
center for these guys?
Pavel Zacha's your first line center.
Yep.
So I don't know. We don't have to dive too deep into the Bruins because I feel like that could go on forever. But yeah,
I agree with you though.
Not a fan of Brad Marchand at all.
Not many people are, but again, the old saying: you hate to play against him. You hate his existence, but you'd love to have him on your team. Next transition into this, it was reported today that Steven Stamkos upset with the fact that the contract negotiations have not even really started, I guess, when he addressed the press today. Is anyone surprised by that? He's your captain, franchise leading scorer in both points and goals. Like, is that a surprise to anybody? Like, I mean, I'm kind of surprised by it. I think that's a guy that you want to keep happy. He's your captain.
It's kind of another situation. Like, he's been there for what, 15 years? Like, I'm getting old enough to remember like when he got drafted, which obviously you guys have too.
I remember. I think he was with
the Sarnia
Sting. Like, I remember like him as like one of the like post Crosby like big prospects, and he's had an unbelievable career. Obviously 2 cups, but
Sarnia's retiring his number. They retired his number last year.
Like, I don't know. Tampa Bay also just feels like another team this season that like, where do they go from here? It's a lot of older guys. And that's why I'm really encouraged by the Sabres, especially the next 2 seasons, is that like they're finally hitting a window where every other team in their division, even the Leafs, even like probably not the Panthers, but like a lot of teams in that division are getting much older.
Yeah,
and they're missing their window, or they're coming out of their window. Obviously, Tampa was in it and they won 2 cups. But like, does Stamkos think now that maybe it's time to move on somewhere else and try to make one more run at it? Because I don't think the Lightning are going to do it anytime soon. Maybe they could this season, one last hurrah, but I don't know, man. I'm not too surprised by it, to be honest. Maybe he thinks it's time to link up with a bunch of younger guys, maybe the Buffalo Sabres. I don't know. Let's just link them to the Buffalo Sabres at this point.
Everybody come to Buffalo.
Yeah, why not at this point? It's the hot, exciting team.
The only thing that I'm surprised by is that like we're looking at this situation with him, because you think about the whole Toronto saga, because he was supposed to be the hometown kid coming home with the Leafs pajamas on before Tavares. Remember that was a year prior.
He was,
and they made a big pitch. Like he almost came to Toronto and stayed down there for 8-5. And Tavares got 11 from them a year later in Toronto. And he stayed down there. I'm surprised they've let it get here with him, because he is such an icon there and such a central piece to scored 60 goals. Man, I think that this is almost borderline disrespectful. Like, if you're going to do this type of stuff to Stamkos, I don't know, man. Yeah, I really feel like the good vibes in Tampa could be ending. Because if he goes, like if he were to leave, like you're essentially in sell mode, and like let's do a retool here. Because Braden Point's still young enough. You still have some young pieces there. Sorelli's young enough. Like, you could still keep those guys around. But if Stamkos goes, like, within the next couple of years, you're probably seeing Kucherov go. You're probably maybe seeing Hedman go. Like, that's what happens. Like, the first big domino falls, and suddenly you're like, well, now what do we do? You can't replace that guy. Like, especially in terms of relevance to the franchise. He'll have his number retired there one day too.
Vasilevsky's not even 30 yet.
This takes me kind of back to like what went down with Vinny Lecavalier.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that came after a horrible injury where he screwed his ankle up and was never the same after. But Stamkos had a lot of injuries he's had to come back from and done so admirably. Yeah, this is a very similar situation to Lecavalier. And if Stamkos left, boy, I still think that guy's got plenty to offer a team who's contending. Guy can absolutely rip it. One of the best goal scorers of his generation for sure.
I agree. I back when he was with Sarnia, I remember he had to highlight, pull the stick behind both legs and go top cheese with it. I used to practice that in roller hockey when I could.
He's the best player that's ever played for that franchise by
absolutely. And they've had Martin St. Louis and Vincent Lecavalier. You know what I mean? Like,
I meant Sarnia, but also yes, also Tampa. With Tampa, yes, I think he is the best. You could, Marty won a Hart, and a cup. Brad Richards, I still think he is the best. Yes, but there are other guys involved in that conversation. I'd hear an argument about Vasilevsky, maybe even Hedman, but I more meant with Sarnia. Like, he's the best player that's ever put on a Sting jersey. And deservedly got his number retired.
Yep. So, I am myself surprised. I remember, feels like yesterday we thought for 24 hours he was going to be a Buffalo Sabre. Like, it was a real thing. As much as it was with Babcock, we thought like Steven Stamkos was going to be a Buffalo Sabre. I think it might have been in the same offseason even. I can't remember, but if he's available. And, the Zegras thing doesn't work out, and they're trying to retool and rebuild, and that's not going to cost the Kings ransom. I'd love to see Steven Stamkos in a goat head jersey. We talk about Pat Kane potentially.
Get this train rolling. Everybody's coming in.
I know, everybody. And we have the cap space, and we have the capital to make it work.
One last point on Zegras, as I'm continuing to look at things. Your boy Kevin and Trotter 825 on Twitter. Yep. I think you interact with him a lot. He made a really good point about what this probably is. He thinks that it's leverage coming from Zegras' agent to the reporter to get this out there as camp is opening, press conferences, like get the media and fans like barking about him going to a team with a young core, the cap space to fit him, prospects to send the other way, so that the Ducks freak out and give him the deal that he's been wanting.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Exactly. And like, that's a really good point about how this rumor just came out of nowhere from a legitimate NHL reporter.
Because again, it makes no sense for Anaheim.
Exactly. Like, this probably is coming from Zegras' agent. But if that sparks Kevin Adams to be like, there's a thought there. If you don't want
would
him,
you come? Would you come?
Yeah,
here?
if you don't want him, hey, like Anaheim, like Pat Verbeek, like, let's talk. Like, if you aren't willing to give him this deal and there's currently some like friction, like we can fit him. We'd love to have this guy. Like, I don't know. Who knows if there's any legitimacy about it.
Honestly, if it makes Kevin pick up the phone and make a phone call, I'm all for it. Let's see what it takes. Because really,
100%.
Realistically, outside of the obvious in our pipeline, I don't think Devin Levi's in that conversation anymore. He's a full-time NHLer. Zach Benson's the only guy in the system for me.
Which is crazy because they drafted him 3 months ago.
I know. He's the only guy for me. It's like
he's the best prospect in the best prospect pool in the NHL.
Yep.
And they fell to him at 13.
And they have so much behind him, though. Like, so much to bargain with. It's nuts.
It's really
Noah Austin, Rosine, Savoy. You know, we have some defense. You know, Ryan Johnson even. Johnson.
Of course, Benson isn't a sure thing, but the fact that his projection level and the fact that he fell to the Sabres where he did is really remarkable.
We talked about it on this show, like, you know, right after they drafted him. I'd be all for it. Just wrapping up things here. Obviously, went a little bit longer than we initially expected it, just because you know, the Zegras deal. One thing I kind of want to start getting into, because we do touch on it every once in a while. Maybe starting a new segment, calling it the Beer League Beat. We all play Beer League. I mean, I don't know if you do, Drury, but
I did.
Yeah.
I haven't put skates on in like 4 years, dude. My knee is a disaster. I'm not an athlete anymore, dude.
No.
I was barely an athlete.
I mean, I'd love to talk some of like, I'll play Beer League. I play into a couple different leagues. Hurls. I know are you guys back playing yet, or?
Yeah. New season's just started.
New season, a lot of animosity still. Or you guys got a chip on your shoulder?
So the team, I can catch Jury up really quick. In the playoffs last season, we beat a team in the first round. And then after the game, they went through our box scores and found out that one of our guys didn't play the minimum 5 games in the regular season to be eligible for the playoffs. And they snitched on us to the league, and the league forced us to forfeit our playoff game, and they moved on. So it was a really, really wild circumstance. I texted their captain because I know the guy really well, kind of lambasted him, obviously called him a coward. That team changed their name this season. They were so embarrassed about what they did that they couldn't go by the same name anymore. So they have a new name, new jerseys. It's all the same guys. We haven't played them yet, and I'm really looking forward. I already told my team that we're not shaking hands with them after the game. We're just going straight off the ice.
Love it.
It's a legitimate controversy that we're 0-2 to begin the season. Like, we're all kind of rattled by what happened. I've never heard of anything like that ever happening in any recreational league ever. They legitimately did hours and hours of research to find out that one guy that played in the playoff game didn't have one game necessary.
They went full Clark Kent.
And it's pretty crazy. I can't believe they did it, but they did it. And the guy tried to justify it somehow, and it was just like, you're an embarrassment. So yeah, nothing too crazy has happened since. But I think we play them in a few weeks, so I will report back once we do.
I can't wait.
That's so greasy. It's really lame.
It's so lame. And that's what I said to him. I was like, do you guys want to move on this way? Like, you're going to lose next round. Like, we beat you guys fair and square, and then they ended up losing next round. And I texted them after the game. I was like, I hope that was worth it. Like, I hope, the entire league knows about it now, too, and every single player from every team knows what they did, and they're getting chirped relentlessly. Like, guys left the team because of it. Like, it was like a whole thing.
Dude, I remember growing up just in high school, there used to be message boards back before social media. Like the Western New York high school hockey message boards used to get fucking brutal.
I remember that. I remember that. I was on there frequently.
Oh yeah, dude. It was brutal, but my season hasn't started yet. Got a whole lot of new faces coming in. Lost some guys we weren't expecting to lose, for sure. We lost one guy that's been a lifer that we thought we was going to be moving to Arizona, of all places.
Maybe he can play for the Coyotes.
Yeah, maybe. He might be. Arizona State. But a whole lot of new faces, small handful I've never seen play before, so we'll see how this goes. I have one guy who played in the USPHL. I've seen him play, but he's bringing 2 of his buddies, and he swears by them. The last time this happened, though, I'll call him out too. Nick Serto, a friend of mine, he swore by his buddy Eddie. He's like, "Oh, if you want Dan, you need Eddie, or no, if you want Eddie, you need Dan. You got to bring them both. They're a package deal." I'm like, okay. And then he steps on the ice and he falls twice in his first 10 seconds. And not like, oh, somebody played a joke on it, put tape on his skates, like he just couldn't skate. And I'm like, this is a joke. Is same Eddie? Is this a different guy? Like, nope, the guy just couldn't skate. And I love him to death, but Nicky definitely pumped his tires up quite a bit. So,
but was he a good room guy? Like, did he bring beers and stuff? Because I was
great
best skater because my knee's a gong show. But when you are clearly not one of the top players, you gotta supply the boy. It's beer league, I would typically bring an extra 12 Krispies so that everybody, was having a good time. You got to ingratiate yourself to the boys, And
honestly, I'm probably exaggerating. He wasn't a bad player. He wasn't a bad player at all. Eddie was not a bad player. It was just he was built up to be way up here. And he was like,
yeah, you can't do that in beer league. Just say, he's a good dude, played hockey.
Yeah, you
good
built
guy.
him up. You built him up to be a superstar. Like he was better than you, Nick. And then he gets on the ice, and he didn't fall twice, but you could tell he wasn't what he was built up to be. And I'm just like, man, that's why I don't like going by guys' words anymore. But I'm doing that again here. I'm going on good faith. It's like, oh yeah, he's an athlete. He's jacked. He's this, that. It's like, okay, we'll see what happens. But no, good guy. He wasn't a bad hockey player, but he was built up to be something a lot more. And it was what it was. So yeah, again, just like you, Hurls, I'll report back. But this is a segment I like to start because I think we all play beer league at some point, right? We all end up there, whether you play or you're a former professional or you're like us, just washed up has-beens that don't want to put the yearbook away. So. Any final thoughts?
I hope Trevor Zegras is a member of the Buffalo Sabres.
I agree.
That's all I have to say at the end of this podcast.
How about you, Drury? Any final thoughts?
No, I'm just excited for the season to start. And I'm excited to get back in the broadcast booth this year. I think my Guelph Storm are going to challenge for one of the top seeds in the West. It should be a really fun year. We got a couple of really great players on the team coming back this year that are some of the best talents in the OHL. So I'm excited to just get the season underway and then watch some NHL hockey. It's going to be a great year, and I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to watch junior hockey as well, man. If anybody gets a chance to watch the Guelph Storm or listen to the Guelph Storm, Ryan is their play-by-play guy. Does a phenomenal job when we had our episode here about RJ. He mentioned he used to and still rips RJ off constantly. So if he can even be 10% of what RJ is, you're gonna get a great play-by-play guy. So that being said, I got nothing other than, again, I hope these rumors about Trevor Zegras are in fact true. Would be phenomenal, in my opinion, for the game, because I think he'd be much more appreciated and valued in a market like Buffalo, whereas, as Hurls mentioned before, in a market at Anaheim where, hockey just isn't going to be the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth sport when you have the LA Kings already there and you have the San Jose Sharks in California. I don't know. I think he'd be just much more appreciated here in Buffalo. So that being said, this has been episode 139 of Two Goalies, One Mic, brought to you by Outlet Liquor, the place to buy a case on George Urban Boulevard. I am Duane for Hurls, and of course, from the Instigator podcast, I'm going to say Chris Jury, Ryan Jury.
I'll take it.
I'll take it. Make sure you go check him out. You want to plug your handles real quick, bud?
Yeah, you can find the Instigating Podcast, Instigating with Clarkie and Drury. It's just at Instigating Pod on social media. We do a weekly show, much like you guys. You can find it on all your favorite podcast apps. It's on YouTube as well. We have a lot of great people on. This week, we're going to chat with former Blue Jays beat reporter Barry Davis. Very excited to talk about the weird Toronto Blue Jays this year.
They've been a fun team to watch. I will say that.
No, they haven't. And that's kind of the point. They are as frustrating as hell.
Fun to watch.
Hey, yes, as a Red
Sox fan,
I'm sorry, but the Jays are they're interesting, I'll say that. So that'll be on the show this week.
So yep, you find him again at those handles, the Instigating Podcast. Again, I am Duane for Hurls, for Cully, who isn't here, and Ryan Drury. We will talk to you next week. Take care.